TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. It was 4:07 a.m. when Riley Brooks finally felt her brief oasis of sleep shatter. The faint hum of the dryer in the hallway grew to a pounding racket against the plaster walls, echoing through the narrow townhouse in Beaverton, Oregon. Riley, only 3 weeks postpartum, lay clutching the hospital-grade pillow behind her back, heart pounding. She'd closed her eyes just minutes ago after a draining night of rock and bounce sessions with baby Aurora on the living room couch. Every nerve in Riley's body screamed for one more uninterrupted hour of rest, but it was gone. A sudden thump, thump, thump thundered overhead as her mother-in-law, B. Winters, stomped down the hallway above, vacuum cleaner in hand like a drill sergeant on a mission. Riley's head snapped toward the ceiling, where pale morning light seeped through the blinds. She pressed her hands over her ears, eyes squeezed shut, willing the noise to stop. Instead, the vacuum purred louder, then rattled, as if they were sifting through every corner of the Brooks family home for a speck of dust. Riley sighed, stirring painfully at the incision near her abdomen. The C-section scar throbbed with protest. She blinked up at the ceiling fan, whose gentle swirl had been the only thing keeping her calm through weeks of round-the-clock feedings. Now, the spinning blades, once hypnotic, seemed to mock her. "Welcome to the 4 a.m. cleaning shift," Riley murmured under her breath, voice raspy from exhaustion. At once, a muffled voice carried down the stairs. "Riley? Sweetheart? Are you awake?" It was Cameron, her husband, stifling a yawn. He appeared at the bedroom door, one hand rubbing his temple, the other clutching last night's hoodie. "Yeah," Riley croaked faintly.
I'm
wide awake." He stepped in quietly, moving toward the top of the bed. He glanced upstairs, then back at Riley, torn between swatting the vacuum cleaner from the hallway and keeping the peace. "Mom says she just wants to get a head start on laundry and vacuuming," he whispered. "She's worried about us being comfortable." Riley frowned into her pillow. "Comfortable?" She wiped a bead of sweat from her temple. "It's
Patruam, come."
He nodded, eyes full of regret. He slipped under the covers beside her. "I know. She means well." Well, felt miles away. The memory of the previous night's ordeal, a frantic search for the missing diaper bag, Aurora's unending wails, Riley's own tears, loomed large. She'd begged for a few quiet hours of sleep while Cameron took the baby. But staffing shortages at his startup forced him to pull an all-nighter on a critical update. Riley had tried to manage alone, rocking Aurora in the nursery's glider, her legs aching. Just when her eyelids had finally grown heavy around midnight, Aurora woke again. Then Riley dozed off on the couch, so exhausted she didn't even notice when Cameron tiptoed off to log back into work. And now this. A soft click, the vacuum's motor shutting off, brought a fleeting hush. Riley's heart fluttered. Maybe there was a chance. Then, as quickly as it had died, the noise roared back to life. Riley sighed, exhaling through clenched teeth. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, pressing her bare feet against the cool wooden floor. Every step toward the hallway set her incision on edge. Cameron touched her arm. "Let me talk to her," he said softly. He rose and padded barefoot toward the stairs, shoulders slumped. Riley watched his back disappear around the corner, then closed her eyes against the glimmer of dawn peeking through her curtains. She heard muffled voices, first BEA's firm, clipped tone, then Cameron's patient, measured reply. "Mom, she just got out of the hospital," he said. "I know she did," came BA's reply. "Everything's still sore. She'll recover faster in a spotless house." Riley bit back a laugh that felt too sharp for 4 a.m. She lay back against the pillow, listening to the murmured negotiation. After a heartbeat, the vacuum clicked off again, this time for good. Moments later, Cameron returned, closing the bedroom door with a gentle click. He sat beside her, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Sorry," he whispered. "She's going back to bed now." Riley offered a thin smile. "Thank you." She reached out for his hand, the gesture weighted with weariness and relief. Cameron wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her against his chest. The ceiling fan's blades hummed overhead, no longer drowning out reality, but smoothing the edges of Riley's frayed nerves. She closed her eyes again, this time letting fatigue take her away. In the distance, she heard Aurora stirring, the gentle coo of a newborn. Not a furious cry, just a soft promise of another day. Riley inhaled a shaky breath, trusting that today she would find her strength again. Because soon enough, the sun would rise for real, and she'd have a warrior's day ahead, changing diapers, nursing her daughter, navigating mother-in-law politics, and tending to her own fragile heart. But for now, wrapped in Cameron's arms, Riley drifted back toward sleep, spending every precious second she could reclaim before the world woke up once more. Morning light filtered softly through the sheer curtains as Riley Brooks sat propped against a mountain of pillows in the master bedroom. She cradled baby Aurora to her chest, gently bouncing in the rocker, eyes heavy but determined to stay awake, if only to avoid the anxiety of falling asleep and waking to stale, solitary silence. Down the hallway, the kitchen clock ticked toward 7 a.m. Riley could already hear the rhythmic thwack of wooden spoons against ceramic bowls, the hiss of simmering broth on the stove, and the unmistakable scent of pork bones slowly reducing into an amber-colored elixir. A soft knock sounded at the bedroom door. Cameron Brooks appeared, tousled hair damp from a rushed shower, buttoning his shirt one-handed. In his free hand, he carried a small folded paper towel. He slipped it onto Riley's bedside table. "She left this out for you," he murmured, nodding toward the doorway. "She said it's just the thing for a new mother." Riley's stomach tightened. She unfolded the towel to reveal 2 dried dates and a slice of ginger root dusted with coarse salt, remnants of last night's recovery tea. She offered a weak smile. "Thanks," she replied, her voice husky. She brought the dates to her lips, chewed slowly, letting the cloying sweetness fold into pockets of warmth. She added the ginger to her sippy cup of lukewarm water, intending to sip it later. Below, the kitchen clatter intensified. Riley set Aurora into her crook sling and tried to sit up straighter, wary of letting the baby slip. She blinked against the dull ache in her incision, the sharp reminder of her cesarean. A moment later, the door creaked open wider. Bea Winters, Riley's mother-in-law, stood framed in the doorway, wearing her favorite butter-yellow cardigan and a pinned-on apron embroidered with wildflowers. In her hands she carried a deep white casserole dish, steam rising from its surface in lazy tendrils. "Good morning, dear," Bea called out cheerfully. Her voice carried that gentle but firm cadence of a teacher who never quite mastered the softer side of encouragement. "I made you some chicken and okra stew. It has bone broth, turmeric, and black pepper, all the good, restorative ingredients." Riley forced a smile. "Thanks, Bea." Bea set the casserole on Riley's nightstand with a small thud and began unloading 2 heavy ceramic bowls. As she arranged one plate on a napkin within Riley's reach, she launched into her daily litany. "You know, when I had my girls, I lived on this stuff," Bea said, rolling a spoon in the stew. "Bone broth helps your ligaments heal. The collagen strengthens your joints, turmeric reduces inflammation, and okra is rich in fiber for your digestion." She glanced at Aurora. "And this will help with your milk supply, too." Riley swallowed, feeling the familiar tug of guilt in her chest. She glanced at the baby, who nestled against her collarbone, blinking sleepily. She wanted to be grateful, and she was, but her appetite had deserted her long ago. The memory of last night's nausea rode on the tip of her tongue, the rancid aftertaste when she tried the broth. The sudden rush to the bathroom, the tears of frustration as Aurora's unattended cries echoed. Bea leaned over, gently smoothing Riley's hair. "Just a few spoonfuls warmed through, sweetheart. You'll feel stronger by noon." Cameron stepped forward and lightly touched BEA's arm. Mom, Riley's still sore. Let her eat when she's ready. BEA's brow furrowed. She needs real nourishment, not just sips of tea. Riley's heart pounded. She knew this conversation already. The well-meaning insistence, the gentle scolding. She clenched the edge of her hospital blanket. Can I have a moment alone? She asked quietly. Bea looked affronted, as though Riley's request rattled the natural order of postnatal recovery. But she nodded and slipped out of the room, setting the bowls neatly on a rolling tray beside the door. As soon as the door clicked shut, Riley exhaled. She closed her eyes and focused on the rhythm of Aurora's breathing in her sling. She cradled the casserole bowl in her lap, wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead, and took a slow taste. The stew tasted wholesome, nutty chicken, soft okra pods, the warmth of spices. But her stomach churned. She swallowed twice before placing a spoonful into her mouth. The back of her throat spasmed, and she set the spoon down with a shaking hand. She could not do this. Tears welled behind her lids. The guilt of perceiving these meals as a burden twisted her gut more fiercely than any ramen she'd eaten before her pregnancy. She'd always loved bone broth. She'd cooked it herself, simmering bones for 15 hours on Sunday afternoons. But now, even familiar flavors turned on her. Cameron re-entered, eyes concerned. He set their coffee mugs next to the tray. How are you feeling? Riley's voice hitched.
I'm sorry.
He knelt beside the bed, resting one hand on her knee. You don't have to apologize. She looked up, chins trembling. I feel terrible. I know you both want to help, but my stomach just can't handle it yet. Cameron gave her hand a squeeze. Okay, you can eat when you're ready. Riley closed her eyes again, relieved by his support. She opened them to see Bea peek back into the room, worry in her gaze. A brief silence followed, one that Riley knew would stretch into a long moment of unspoken understanding. Bea set the tray down, carefully removed the bowls, and said, All right, I'll heat up some oatmeal and a smoothie with berries. You like that, don't you? Surprised, Riley managed a small nod.
Yes.
Thank you, Bea. For the first time that morning, there was no protest, only a gentle retreat as Bea closed the door behind her. An hour later, Riley sipped a lukewarm berry and yogurt smoothie from a straw. The tart sweetness slid down easily. Aurora's gentle snuffles in the sling made Riley smile. Cameron stood by the window, updating his meeting status on Slack, glancing back at them every few minutes. He seemed torn between work and home, but his priorities were clear. Bea emerged from the kitchen carrying a small bowl of steel-cut oats topped with a handful of sliced banana. This one's milder,
she announced.
No spices, just nutrition. Riley's eyes filled with gratitude. Perfect. She lifted a spoonful of thick, creamy oatmeal to her lips. No nausea this time, just the simple comfort of warm grains. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, while Aurora dozed. Bea set an indulgent chocolate protein bar wrapped in golden foil on Riley's nightstand. For later, she said softly. Riley blinked back tears. Thank you. BEA's stern features softened. I want you well. Every bit of help you need. I'm here. In that moment, Riley realized the fierce love hidden behind BEA's well-intentioned insistence. The weight of traditional nourishment was still heavy, but now, layered with the encouragement of a mother-in-law striving to support a daughter-in-law unlike herself. Riley settled back against her pillows, spoon in hand, as sunlight streamed through the window. She took a calm breath, feeling slightly stronger, slightly more in control, ready to face the next challenge of the day. And somehow, the kitchen's warmth no longer felt like a trap, but a promise that, in good time, her body would heal and her appetite return. Aurora stirred, blinking up at her mother. Riley smiled and whispered, Let's start over, sweetheart. Then, with the oatmeal still gently warming her belly, she hummed a lullaby, savoring the renewed peace between family traditions and her own journey to recovery. The digital clock on Riley's nightstand glowed 2:17 a.m. in stark red numerals. Outside, The neighborhood was swallowed by silence. Only the distant rumble of the freeway traffic hinted that life in Beaverton, Oregon, still pulsed on. Inside the Brooks household, however, exhaustion and tension had reached a fever pitch. Riley lay in bed, or rather, she'd collapsed into a tangled heap of pillows and blankets, cradling baby Aurora against her chest. The nursery glider beside them squeaked in protest the 100th time Riley shifted Aurora's weight. Every muscle in Riley's arms and back screamed for relief, but the minute she set Aurora down, the baby's wails crescendoed. Aurora's cries pierced Riley's skull, a raw, urgent demand so primal it echoed inside her very bones. Riley buried her face in her hands, absorbing the warmth of her palms, trying to stave off panic. She felt as though each sob tore at her heart. Cameron lay next to her, immobilized by fatigue and code deadlines. His laptop still rested on the corner of the bed, screensaver paused on a half-finished error report from work. Riley heard him stifle a yawn while he rubbed his forehead. "Riley," he muttered, voice thick with sleep. Do you want me to take her?" Riley shook her head without opening her eyes. No, I've got her." Her voice wavered, brittle. She had promised herself she wouldn't ask Cameron again. She couldn't bear to shift this burden back onto him. He had pulled 2 all-nighters last week. She didn't want to guilt him, didn't want to push him past his limit. She needed to prove she could do this, until the moment she realized she couldn't. Aurora's wailing spiked, her tiny fist pounding Riley's chest in frustration. Milk supply was still low. Riley's heart lurched every time her daughter's mouth opened in hungry desperation. She rocked Aurora back and forth, awkwardly trying different positions, football hold, cradle hold, upright against her shoulder, but nothing soothed the baby's cries. Riley felt tears sting her own eyes. She adjusted the white noise machine. Ocean waves, rain on a tin roof, static hiss. Nothing dulled the dissonance inside her. Her shoulders bunched, her back arched. Every second felt like an eternity. At 2:24 a.m., the breaking point came. A single shriek from Aurora cut through Riley's half-baked effort to stay calm. Riley's mind went blank. Pressure built behind her eardrums until she raised her voice over the storm. "Stop. Just stop crying," she snapped, startling both Aurora and herself. Everything froze. Aurora's sobbing tapered to confused hiccups. Riley's heart pounded as she stared down at the tiny face. Round cheeks flushed bright pink, lower lip quivering. Aurora looked at Riley with wide, bewildered eyes, then launched into a fresh cascade of tears. Riley's adrenaline surged. She had meant to yell at her daughter, but the unrelenting exhaustion and the knife-edge stress snapped her reserve. She rocked Aurora silently, lips pressed together, tears sliding down her own cheeks. Cameron sat bolt upright. "Riley," he began, voice sharp in the darkness. She cut him off with a shake of her head. "I'm fine," she croaked. But her body shook violently. She pressed her cheek against Aurora's head, the baby's small limbs flailing against her. Moments passed in silence, broken only by Aurora's hiccups and Cameron's quiet intake of breath. Finally, Riley lifted her head and whispered, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart." She pressed a gentle kiss to Aurora's forehead, feeling the soft down of newborn hair against her lips. "I love you."
"I'm sorry."
Aurora's cries subsided into soft snuffles. Riley sighed,
Tears still falling.
She realized how badly she'd lost control, how utterly depleted she'd become. Her incision burned, her ribs ached, her shoulders felt poised to collapse. Motherhood had never seemed so daunting. Cameron slid closer and took Aurora gently from Riley's arms. He bounced Aurora in the rocker while softly humming an off-key lullaby. Riley watched in silence, head bowed, guilt coiling in her chest. BEA's footsteps and a soft clack from the hallway signaled her presence, even though she'd been instructed not to come near during these moments. Riley's chest tightened. If Bea looked in now, if she saw Riley's tear-stained face, her trembling hands, Riley didn't know if she'd have the strength to explain. The fear of judgment, of being labeled incompetent, squeezed her throat. But Bea stopped in the doorway, anyway. silhouetted in the dim hall light. Her white hair lay in a neat bob, and her lips were pressed thin. She studied Riley's face for a long moment, then Cameron's, then the rocking chair. Riley closed her eyes, bracing for reproach. Instead, Bea simply said, "Let me make some chamomile tea." It was neither an apology nor an accusation, just a gentle concession that Riley needed help. Cameron managed a faint nod. "Thank you, Mom." Bea tiptoed back down the hallway. Riley exhaled, staring at her hands. She'd unleashed her frustration on her daughter, the one soul who depended on her absolutely. The mix of guilt and relief washed over her in equal measure. She whispered a promise. "I'll get better at this, Aurora." "I will." Cameron returned to Riley's side, holding the steaming mug of tea. He handed it to her with a tired, tentative smile.
"Here."
"It might help." Riley cradled the mug in both hands, savoring the warmth. She sipped carefully, letting the floral bitterness calm her rattled nerves. Aurora had finally drifted off in Cameron's arms. Cameron settled her into the portable bassinet they'd set up beside the bed. As Riley watched Aurora sleep, her own eyelids felt heavier. The tears that had scalded her eyes were replaced by ache, an ache that encompassed her entire being. She reached out and took Cameron's hand, intertwining their fingers. I need a break," Riley whispered. The admission felt like a confession of defeat, but it wasn't defeat, it was survival. Cameron nodded. "I'll watch her. You get a nap." He gently lifted Riley's hand to his lips, then picked up Aurora and padded quietly toward the nursery. Left alone, Riley lay back against the pillows. The tea warmed her from the inside out. She shut her eyes, lying still for a moment to gather what strength she had left. The midnight meltdown still echoed in her mind, but so did the soft reassurance of Cameron's support and Bea's unexpected tea offering. Aurora's soft breathing drifted up the hall. Riley inhaled deeply, tasting chamomile and gratitude. The path ahead was still steep, still strewn with cries and fears and moments of wretched exhaustion. But perhaps, she thought, she didn't have to face it alone after all. Curling into the sheets, Riley closed her eyes and let the first hints of sleep claim her. Tonight's collapse had brought a new clarity. She could plead for help. She could lean on both her husband and her mother-in-law. And she could forgive herself for a momentary lapse in patience. And with that, the fragile fortress of sleep finally cradled her, even as baby Aurora's soft snore hummed in the distance, promising that tomorrow would bring another round of challenges and another chance at grace. Riley woke to the sterile scent of antiseptic, bright overhead lights, and the relentless beeping of monitors. She blinked blearily at the unfamiliar white ceiling of the emergency ward. A thin gauze bandage wrapped her abdomen. Her body felt heavy, as if weighted by an invisible anchor. The last memory of the night before was fragmented. The jarring crash when her scooter hit a pothole, the rush of pain, then darkness. Now, reality settled in with chilling clarity. This was more than a broken body. Something inside her mind had fractured, too. A knock at the partitioned curtain, the length of the bed, made her wince. A calm voice intoned, "Good morning, Miss Brooks."
"I'm Dr. Spetel."
"How are you feeling?" Riley managed to turn her head. The doctor, mid-30s, warm brown eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, pulled a chair close and consulted a clipboard. Riley's throat felt tight. She tried to speak, but only a croak emerged. "Pain is under control?" Dr. Patel asked gently. Riley nodded. The sharp ache across her lower ribs and hip was muted by analgesics. But deeper inside, a darker ache gnawed at her, one she couldn't medicate away. Dr. Patel studied Riley's chart. "Your scans show a clean fracture of the clavicle and a minor hairline break in your femur. Both healing well. I'd like to talk about how you're coping emotionally, especially since your baby, Aurora, was born just weeks ago." Riley's pulse hammered. She remembered the snippet from her obstetrician's discharge instructions. Watch for signs of postpartum depression. She'd shrugged it off then. She was too tired, she'd told herself.
Now.
Hearing it from Dr. Patel's calm lips felt like a verdict.
I,
I thought I'd be fine, Riley whispered. Her hands twisted the hospital gown. Adjustment after childbirth can be overwhelming, Dr. Patel said. You've been through major surgery, a traumatic accident, and you're nursing around the clock in a new environment. He paused, letting the words sink in. I'm concerned you may be experiencing postpartum depression. Have you felt hopelessness, persistent sadness, or lack of interest in activities you used to enjoy? Riley swallowed the lump in her throat. The empty ache had been with her for days, growing stronger each night. She struggled to care about anything but the relentless demands of her body and her baby. The scattered jottings she kept in a phone note. Can't sleep. Crying alone in shower. Not enough milk. Flew through her mind. Yes, she admitted, voice trembling. I feel worthless.
guilty.
I don't want to get out of bed.
I've
thought of giving up sometimes. The confession felt like stepping off a ledge. Dr. Patel's face remained compassionate. You're not alone, Riley. This is a medical condition, not a personal failing. Postpartum depression affects about 1 in 7 new mothers. Left untreated, it can worsen and affect your well-being and your bond with Aurora. He slid a pamphlet across the bedside table. Postpartum depression, what you need to know. Riley traced the brochure's title with a shaky finger. Inside were checklists, quotes from other mothers, and a recommendation for immediate counseling and, if needed, medication. She looked up at Dr. Patel, tears pooling in her eyes. I'm so tired, she said, her voice breaking. I can't see a way out. Dr. Patel handed her a tissue. There is a way out, and you don't have to face it alone. I'd like to arrange for you to meet with our perinatal mental health specialist today. You'll have support groups, individual therapy, and we can discuss antidepressant options safe for breastfeeding. Riley blew her nose, wiping away tears. She wanted to scream, no. She feared medication or therapy, the stigma, the notion of being broken. But inside, something flickered, a small relief that, at last, someone believed her pain was real and treatable. I'll do it, she whispered. The sun had dipped low when Riley was wheeled out of the hospital on a wheelchair, Cameron by her side. He carried a water bottle and her overnight bag. She clutched the brochure in her lap. Outside, the crisp Oregon air filled her lungs. She felt fragile, raw, and uncertain, yet also strangely hopeful. In the car, Cameron reached for her hand. How are you feeling? He asked softly. Riley stared at the passing taillights. Terrified and relieved. Cameron glanced over. Relieved? She nodded. Relieved someone finally admitted, I'm not okay. That this isn't normal baby blues. He squeezed her hand. We'll get through this. Together. That evening, in a softly lit counseling room, Riley sat curled in a cushioned armchair. Across from her sat Ms. Green, the perinatal mental health specialist. She had a gentle demeanor. A listening face that made Riley feel safe, sharing her darkest thoughts. I know it's hard to talk about, Ms. Green said, but you're doing the right thing. Tell me what it feels like when you wake up in the morning. Riley shifted, the memory rushing back, blinding exhaustion, a heavy leaden weight, the relentless ache of inadequacy. She swallowed and spoke haltingly. It's like I'm underwater. I can't lift my head. Aurora cries and I feel anger and guilt at the same time. She looked at Ms. Green, bracing for judgment. Instead, Ms. Green nodded with compassion. Anger and guilt are common in postpartum depression. It's your brain's chemical imbalance, not you. We'll work with you on coping strategies, mindfulness, scheduling safe breaks, sleep hygiene, and consider medication. You deserve to feel joy with your daughter. Tears pooled in Riley's eyes. The admission that she deserved joy felt revolutionary. She nodded. I want to live again. At home that night, a calm candle flickered in the nursery as Cameron rocked Aurora to sleep. Riley sat beside him, notebook in hand, her bullet journal for tracking moods and gratitude entries. She wrote slowly. April 14th, 9:42 p.m. I met Ms. Green today. I have PPD, but I'm not alone. Cameron kissed me in the hallway rattle, Not annoyed, just worried. I cried in therapy and I felt heard. Tonight, I'm going to try to sleep. No pressure. I deserve rest. She closed the notebook and leaned back on the couch. Cameron looked at her, eyes kind. Ready for bed? He asked. Riley stretched and nodded.
Yes.
But can we do 2 minutes of breathing exercises first? He smiled, pulling her into his arms. Always. They sat side by side, inhaling slowly, counting to 4, exhaling. Aurora's soft breathing wove with their rhythm as Riley felt a tiny spark of peace. The path ahead would be long, therapy appointments, early mornings, mood fluctuations, but for the first time, Riley believed she could face it. Tomorrow, she'd call her mother-in-law with a new request: gentle help, simple meals, and maybe, just maybe, a little more quiet. That night, Riley drifted into sleep with her hand on Cameron's chest, Aurora curled in the crook of his arm, and a fragile hope blooming in her heart that she could reclaim her life, one breath at a time. The next morning, a gentle, diffused light bathed the Brooks townhouse kitchen. Riley sat at the small breakfast nook, pushing a lukewarm berry smoothie across her placemat. Aurora nursed quietly in Cameron's arms beside her, eyes fluttering drowsily. The house was at its stillest since Aurora's birth. No vacuum. No clang of dishes. Just the soft whir of the refrigerator and the muted hum of the hood fan. Amid that hush, Beatrice B. Winters paused at the threshold, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked at Riley with something in her gaze Riley had never fully seen before. Concern, yes, but also a new tenderness, almost awe at the fragile new life in her daughter-in-law's arms. Be swallowed. May I sit? She asked quietly. She carried a folded cloth napkin, a humble concession instead of the usual casserole dish. Riley glanced up, surprised but pleased. Of course, Bea. She offered the seat across from her. Cameron shifted Aurora to his lap, so Riley could join them. Bea seated herself, smoothing the napkin on her lap. She opened her mouth, paused, then closed it again. For months, her default approach had been to fix problems with traditional wisdom: long steam baths, bone broth tonics, endless household chores to take their minds off stress. But in the sterile environment of therapy sessions and the stark clarity of Riley's emotional exhaustion, she'd glimpsed her own role in the household's turmoil. She cleared her throat. I've been thinking, she said, voice gentle. Maybe I've been pushing too hard. Riley looked at her with wide, hopeful eyes. I appreciate you saying that. Bea nodded, studying the swirling colors in Riley's smoothie. I realize I thought I was helping, getting up early, making meals, keeping the house spotless. But I didn't see how worn out you were. You need space to rest and heal. Riley's throat felt tight. The admission meant more than Bea might ever know. Thank you. I know you care. I'm just not ready for 3 hot meals a day. Or the vacuum twice before dawn. Bea managed a small smile. And maybe I need to learn new ways to care for you. She glanced at Aurora and back. I'd like to try. She reached into her cardigan pocket and produced a small paper notepad. I made a list, ideas I learned from your nutritionist and therapist for gentle support. She handed it over. Riley unfolded the notepad and read the scrawled items. Morning gentle stretches together. 10 minutes of breathing and light movement. Smoothie and oatmeal rotation. Smoothies on odd days. Oatmeal on even days. Quiet hour after lunch. No chores. Just soft music or nap time. Baby watching rotation. Bea takes Aurora for solo cuddles twice a day so Riley can rest. Weekly check-in, a 15-minute sit-down every Sunday to talk feelings, anything that's hard. Each bullet felt like a lifeline. Riley's eyes moistened. She closed the notepad and nodded, softly. These are perfect. For the first time, Bea didn't protest that it was a waste of time or that chores couldn't wait. Instead, she reached across the table and squeezed Riley's hand. I want you healthy and happy. Later that afternoon, Riley napped in the bedroom while Bea gently rocked Aurora in the nursery. She hummed a soft lullaby she'd once taught in her preschool class. Riley drifted into the deepest slumber she'd known in weeks. When she woke, She felt a clarity she'd thought lost. Over the next days, BEA's transformation unfolded in concrete ways. Sunrise breathing. Each morning at 8 a.m., Bea entered the bedroom quietly and invited Riley to join her on the back porch for guided breathing exercises. They inhaled for a count of 4, held, exhaled for 6, simple yet calming. On cooler mornings, they wrapped themselves in blankets. Streamlined nourishment. Breakfast became an array of smoothies with banana, spinach, and chia seeds, delivered bedside. Lunch rotated between soft avocado toast with ricotta and sliced fruit. At dinner, they shared a bowl of lightly seasoned chicken and vegetable soup, minus the overwhelming spices. Riley found she could eat without nausea, and Bea discovered new recipes to their mutual delight. Household harmony. Bea postponed non-essential chores until afternoon quiet hour. She vacuumed the living room only on Tuesdays and Fridays, and she limited the laundry cycles to 1 per day, never before 10 a.m. Dedicated baby time. Twice daily, Bea invited Riley to rest while she held Aurora in her lap by the bay window. She cooed lullabies, changed diapers, and stroked baby's soft hair. Riley felt trust bloom as she realized she could surrender her daughter's care to her mother-in-law's gentle hands. Emotional check-ins. Every Sunday evening, Riley, Cameron, and Bea gathered in the living room, soft lighting, cups of herbal tea, where Riley shared her highs and lows from the week. Bea listened without offering unsolicited advice, simply nodding and saying, "Thank you for sharing." Over time, it became a ritual that deepened their bond. One misty Thursday, Riley sat in the garden wearing a soft robe and slippers, flipping through a parenting magazine. Bea appeared with a tray of chamomile tea and berry muffin halves. She draped a shawl over Riley's shoulders, noting the crisp air. "They're blueberry," she said with a small grin. "Dairy-free, like you asked." Riley laughed for the first time in days. "They're perfect, Bea." BEA's stern features softened. "I want to keep learning. If something isn't working, we'll change it together." As mid-morning light warmed the patio, Aurora gurgled in her baby seat. Cameron joined them with a grin. He placed a hand on Riley's shoulder. "Mom's doing great," he said. "I'm proud of both of you." The three shared a quiet moment of family contentment, no guilt, no tension, only the gentle passing of peace that comes from mutual understanding. That evening, Riley reviewed her mood journal. For the first time since before Aurora's birth, her entries were filled with small joys. April 21st, 8:15 p.m. Woke up rested. Tea on the porch with Bea felt amazing. Aurora napped for an hour with Grandma.
Zit my fin.
Laughed with Cameron. April 22nd, 9:03 a.m. Quiet hour was glorious. Listen to rain. I actually feel calm. No more blank pages or anxious scribbles, just hope taking root. One Sunday night, at their weekly check-in, Riley looked at Bea and Cameron. "I didn't think this day would ever come," she said softly. "I feel like myself again." Bea's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so proud of you, Riley. Thank you for letting me help." Cameron pulled both women into a family hug. Aurora cooed against Riley's chest. In that embrace, 3 generations, young mother, devoted husband, and caring grandmother, wove a new story of support and renewal. Bea had learned that love sometimes meant stepping back, listening, and adapting. Riley had rediscovered strength not in isolation, but in the gentle extension of a helping hand. And Cameron saw the full power of empathy bridging what once had been a silent chasm. As the rain tapped softly on the window, Riley closed her eyes, feeling the steady beat of her heart. Full, hopeful, and resilient. The turning point of her healing wasn't a dramatic cure, but a quiet revolution of understanding, one daily act at a time. And, in that warmth, the Brooks family found their way home together. Cameron woke before dawn, the soft gray light of early morning filtering through the blinds. He padded quietly into the kitchen and set the kettle on, thinking of Riley. When they'd first brought Aurora home, he'd assumed Riley would handle nighttime feedings alone. He'd drift off to sleep, planning to catch up in the morning. But after Riley's breakdown, he realized he needed to step up. Now, each morning he brewed her a turmeric coconut latte in a special mug and brought it to the bedroom. Riley would sit up, hair mussed and eyes heavy, and smile when she saw him standing there. They shared that quiet moment before the day's demands, sipping the warm, spiced drink in companionable silence while Aurora cooed in her bassinet. After breakfast, Cameron took over baby duties without being asked. He learned to cradle Aurora correctly, supporting her head and rocking her gently until she drifted off. His first attempts were awkward, rigid arms and uneven motion, but he studied online videos and asked Riley for pointers. Soon, his arms relaxed, the gentle swaying soothing both him and Aurora. He discovered that a soft rendition of Goodnight Moon or a simple hum could calm her faster than any gadget. Work remained demanding. Urgent bug fixes, late-night deployments, but Cameron arranged his schedule so he could be home by 7 p.m. He shifted his core coding hours earlier, paused on non-critical tasks, and let his team know he'd be unavailable outside his set window. His manager, skeptical at first, saw the change in Cameron's productivity and supported his new routine. Once home, Cameron changed into comfortable clothes, then headed straight to the nursery. He changed diapers, mixed formula from donor milk Riley had stored, and sang lullabies by lamplight. At 9 p.m., when Riley had her first postnatal therapy session over video call, Cameron took the listening role. Aurora in his arms, Riley on the screen, and both parents sharing advice from their specialist. Riley's shoulders visibly relaxed as Cameron validated her feelings and reminded her of coping strategies they'd learned. On weekends, Cameron insisted on adventure walks. He'd strap Aurora into the stroller and guide Riley on a 1-mile circuit past flowering magnolias and neighborhood bistros. No phones allowed, just fresh air. Laughter at Aurora's wide-eyed fascination with the world, and a rare chance for Riley to reconnect with the world beyond recovery. One crisp Saturday, a neighbor's golden retriever bounded over, and Aurora's delighted squeals made Riley laugh for the first time in days. Cameron captured it on his phone, promising to share the video later. At lunch, Cameron frequently paused his workday to check in. He'd set his status to AFK, family check-in, then dial the baby monitor. Riley would answer from the rocker, adjusting Aurora's sling, and Cameron would ask, "How's my favorite mom doing?" He jotted reminders on a sticky note: pick up Greek yogurt, set reminder for Riley's yoga class, order new swaddle blankets. Each small act relieved pressure from Riley's recovery. Evenings featured strategy sessions at the kitchen table. Cameron and Riley spread out Riley's mood journal and a notebook titled Aurora's Schedule. They color-coded feeding windows, nap times, Riley's therapy appointments, and Cameron's work deadlines. That chart, while resembling a corporate Gantt chart, gave them both a sense of control and shared responsibility. When Riley felt overwhelmed, they revised the plan together. One night, after a particularly brutal meltdown, Riley's tears and guilt overwhelmed her. Cameron rushed in, securing Aurora in his arms and handing Riley a lavender rollerball from the calm box he'd assembled, a cozy blanket, essential oils, and a playlist of Riley's favorite indie folk songs. As Holocene by Bon Iver played softly, Riley inhaled the lavender and leaned against Cameron. Aurora's cries faded to soft coos. In that moment, Riley realized she could lean on him completely, and Cameron felt the weight of his commitment settle in his heart. Slowly, Riley's journal began to fill with hopeful entries. She wrote of restful mornings after Cameron took the night shift, of real laughter during family walks, of stolen moments alone in a bookstore he'd driven her to. Each note was a testament to their evolving partnership. Cameron saw her healing unfold and felt proud. No longer a bystander, he was an equal partner in both joy and struggle. By the time Aurora was 2 months old, Cameron had fully woven himself into Riley's daily routine. He prepared a special rice porridge for her nutritionist-approved breakfasts, scrubbed basil pesto onto whole-grain toast, and surprised Riley with a homemade blueberry crumble, Gilmore Girls episodes queued up on the couch. He never shamed himself for missteps, simply asked Riley what she needed next. If she wanted 3 extra minutes of sleep, he carried Aurora on a stroller loop. If she craved fresh fruit, he paused on his way home to stock the fridge. Their love grew deeper in the soft glow of shared responsibility. Riley no longer felt alone in the abyss of postpartum recovery. Aurora sensed the calm solidarity between her parents, and her wide-eyed trust grew with each feeding and song. Cameron's journey wasn't a grand heroic arc but a quiet transformation, a devoted husband learning, stumbling, and rising each day to walk beside his wife. In that steadfast companionship, Riley found the strength to heal, and Cameron discovered the true meaning of partnership in parenthood. The afternoon sun slanted through the maple trees as Riley adjusted the last paper lantern over the patio. A gentle breeze carried the scent of marigolds and fresh grass, and somewhere nearby a robin offered its cheerful song. Riley smoothed the pale blue wrap dress that matched Aurora's tiny swaddle, her heart fluttering with a mix of nerves and joy. Today wasn't just any Sunday. It was their daughter's 1-month celebration, a simple gathering meant to honor the little life who had turned their world upside down and then gently righted it again. Guests began to arrive in a steady trickle. First came Thomas and Eleanor Brooks, Cameron's parents, who stepped onto the deck with quiet reverence. Thomas knelt to cradle Aurora in his strong arms, whispering soft words into the baby's ear. "Your grandpa's here, sweetheart." Eleanor brushed a loose tendril of hair from Riley's face and kissed her cheek. "You look radiant," she said, eyes misting. "You've been through so much, my dear." Soon the sturdy wooden table groaned under platters of quinoa salad, mango mint chicken skewers, and bright asparagus bundles wrapped in prosciutto. On one end, a chalkboard sign announced Aurora's 1-month feast, in looping script, next to a stack of berry-studded pancakes, the result of Riley's late-night craving. Riley caught Cameron's eye as he arranged the pancakes, and he offered her a warm smile that said what a team we are. Neighbors trickled in next, the Parkers with a tray of zucchini muffins, the Millers holding tall glasses of fresh lemonade, and Grandma Dottie with a crocheted blanket sheet made just for Aurora. Each arrival carried with it a blessing, homegrown seedlings, a gentle hug, a promise to help whenever needed. Riley felt tears of gratitude prick her eyes. The days of isolation and exhaustion seemed distant, softened by these generous gestures. At 3 o'clock, Riley tapped a spoon against her water glass, calling for attention without a hint of the anxiety she once knew would have gripped her. The clatter of forks and murmurs subsided. Riley lifted Aurora into her arms, her gaze sweeping across faces she loved. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice steady. "These past 4 weeks have tested us in ways we never imagined. Long nights, tears, and moments when hope felt out of reach. But because of your love, your meals brought by the door, your listening ears, and the time you've given, we've found light in the darkest hours." She paused as Aurora blinked sleepily, then continued, "This celebration is for our little miracle, Aurora, and for every one of you who has held us up. We are so grateful." Warm applause rippled through the crowd as Cameron reached under the table to squeeze Riley's hand. The next moment was a whirl of excitement and sugar. Cameron lifted Aurora into the high chair for the cake smash. The cake, small, pale pink, and crowned with a single gold one, seemed almost too perfect. Aurora poked a curious finger into the frosting, then giggled as a dollop smeared across her cheek. Laughter erupted all around, cameras flashed, and Riley caught herself smiling more freely than she had in weeks. On the grass below, Bee produced soft cloths and tiny washcloths, cleaning Aurora's frosting mustache with gentle care. When the cake smash ended and Aurora was clean again, Riley guided her daughter through a circuit of hugs from grandparents, aunts, uncles, and that handful of dear friends who had been there every step of the way. Each hug felt like a gentle thread weaving Riley and Cameron more tightly into the tapestry of their community. Finally, Aurora dozed in Cameron's arms, her breathing soft and even as the festivities carried on around her. Dinner followed, conversations about summer plans, shared advice on sleep schedules, and jokes about sleepwalking through the next few months. Riley and Cameron circulated among clusters of guests, returning borrowed silverware, accepting offers of hand-me-down clothes, and savoring bits of roasted vegetables that tasted like triumph after so many bland hospital meals. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the lanterns glowed and the air grew cooler. Cameron gathered Riley by the garden gate, where Thomas Brooks awaited with a small wooden toy truck, his handcrafted gift for Aurora's first ride. Thomas knelt, offering the truck to his granddaughter, who grasped its wheel and giggled. Riley rested her head against Cameron's shoulder, tears shining in the lantern light. In that simple act, she felt the full circle of her journey. The terror, the pain, the isolation, transformed now into warmth, connection, and hope. When dinner plates were cleared and Aurora had drifted to sleep in her portable bassinet, the remaining guests gathered around a gentle fire pit. Santa Maria-style benches formed a loose circle, and a soft acoustic guitar playlist filled the night air. Bea poured chamomile tea for everyone, her steady hands painting a picture of the grandmother Riley had once feared, now deeply cherished. Cameron draped a cozy blanket around Riley's shoulders as they sank onto the bench beside Aurora's mat. In the firelight, Riley looked at Cameron and Bea, at her parents-in-law and friends, at the soft faces illuminated by dancing flames. She thought of all they had endured, how fragile life had felt just a month ago. Now, she felt invincible, not alone, but held by a circle of love wider than she ever expected. Gently, she lifted Aurora's tiny hand and whispered, "Welcome to the world, little one. We've built a home for you." Cameron squeezed her hand as Aurora's soft snore joined the night's soundtrack. Under the canopy of stars, Riley's heart brimmed. The 1-month celebration had begun as a marking of time, but it had blossomed into something far greater, the promise of a future built on empathy, shared strength, and unwavering family bonds. As the final lantern flickered against the darkening sky, Riley understood that this was more than an ending. It was the bright, tender beginning of their life together. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.